Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Podcast Assemble, the show where we're going to talk about all of our geeky interests. We're going to be talking about movies and TV shows, comic books and video games. My name's Tommy, and I'm delighted as always to be joined by my friend and co-host from across the pond. It's Tommy Drey.
How's it going?
How are you, mate?
Another week, another setup for the podcast room. How many iterations will we have? Only time will tell. Tommy, for those that can't see, which is everyone, the room that we've done this in has changed every time Tommy comes. And I think this is the final iteration. This is really great
I think this is the best feng shui for the room.
Yeah.
So is that how you say it?
Yeah, feng shui.
Feng shui.
Feng shui? What's a feng shui?
I don't know.
Feng wee.
I don't really know what feng shui is.
Anyway. So I'm coming to you from not across the pond, but
across the pond.
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. I've, as you know, had a fairly large weekend this weekend. Moved house, so if I sound a little tired, that's probably why.
Yeah. I mean, there's not many people I know that would have a lads weekend into the Hunter Valley and then decide, you know what I'm going to do when I get back is just do a day of packing and then another day of moving.
I didn't decide it. I had to do it. I had to leave my apartment.
That was bold. Anyway, yeah, I've been good, man. And I'm really, really excited to talk about something nice for a change.
Oh my God.
A good film.
So excited.
A good film. Because we always cock tease ourselves with like the things the things we like to watch, the good news we're really interested in, and then just transfer to a dreadful, disastrous, like waste of film.
Waste of life.
Yeah, movie.
Well, that's a nice little segue. We might as well jump straight to the what you've been up to section then. What have you've obviously been watching something you enjoy. What have you been up to this last week?
I have been binging The Alchemist, which we talked about previously. I'm on to season 2.
Well, what's The Alchemist again? Remind me.
It is basically set in like the pre-1900, would it be the 20th century? If it's the 19th century, 20th century, pre-20th century.
Correct.
So we're in the 19th century, late 19th century. It's a very convoluted way to get there, but we did get there in the end. It's the 19th century, and it's set in New York, and it's like basically follows like a really gruesome serial killer, or at least the first season did. The second season seems to be going in a similar way. They didn't do a 180. It's still gruesome murders. Okay, good. And it's this like guy who's basically like the first version of a psychologist, who they kind of.
So there's no magic in it. So I remember I watched the trailer and I was like,
no magic. It had maybe magic-y medieval vibes, but it's just because it's like more gothic, like killer film. Like
it kind of reminded me of like a long form version of. Do you remember the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes film?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. It is kind of like that, but more gruesome. And you know what? It almost like if it was gonna have like some kind of science fiction-y vibe, it's almost like a Frankenstein vibe, but it's not Frankenstein.
Oh, okay, interesting.
But yeah, it's good. It's got Luke. God, what is it? Luke Moore, who some people will know. He's an English actor from Beauty and the Beast, his reanimated film. You know, I got to find what else he's in, because I think this is the second time I've brought him up, so I'm going IMDb. And then the guy from Civil War that sets up the whole thing.
Nemo, yeah, of course.
Yes,
yeah.
So that is the connection.
Daniel Bruhl.
Marvel universe.
I rate him as an actor. He's cool. He's an interesting bloke. Like, he's been in a few things. I like Daniel
He's got
Bruhl.
an interesting vibe. I'll say that like his vibe is kind of, I don't think he has a lot of acting range.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But he's definitely like diehard into this character that he plays he's the main guy kind of. And it's got a really, really cool storyline of like the first woman in the police department in New York that's really it's good. It's a good woman with agency, which you don't see as much of. Or you're seeing more of, but it's good to see it. And it's I really like the actress there too. So let me figure out what her name is.
Interesting.
That's what I've been watching. It's quite gruesome. How about you?
What have I been up to? I've carried on watching The Boys. I love The Boys. I just haven't had a lot of time with anything recently, to be perfectly honest. My one sort of, not guilty pleasure, but the one thing I've sort of been rewatching recently was Daredevil.
Yeah. For
the Netflix show. I finished the first season in about 4 days. I kind of know it. I can have it on the background. It's such a good series. That and The Punisher, I can watch them over and over again. They're so good. But other than that, obviously, you know, moving house is pretty time consuming. I almost didn't get a chance to rewatch this movie that we're going to be talking about later on for the 20th time or whatever it is.
This is the 20th time you watched it?
I've watched it so many times.
That's my second time.
Well, it's a type of movie that I can just flick on an airplane and just watch.
So maybe why you didn't know who I was talking about, because his name isn't Luke Moore, it's Luke Evans. Is that ring a bell?
That would make sense.
I think in the show his last name is Moore, so I just kind of did the old
amalgamated the two.
Yeah, the old parse.
Well, interesting. You talked about strong female characters before, because we've had some pretty cool news. I'm going to segue pretty swiftly there into the news section.
That was fucking agile. Yeah, I was pretty agile of me. Well, I think my most interesting and favorite piece of news of the week is that Wonder Woman 1984 has been slated for a simultaneous release in cinemas and HBO Max on Christmas Day. How is it on HBO Max? Is that a Warner Brothers thing? Do they own HBO?
Yeah.
Okay. That's simple enough.
Well, they have all the properties. Okay, all the DCU, I don't know what they call it these days, the DC, whatever it is, the properties, which is super cool. I think this is, I mean, a lot of people talking about, is it reactionary to what Marvel did with Mulan? Sorry, Disney did with Mulan, as in put it behind a big paywall, whereas this will just come with your HBO Max subscription, which I think is really awesome. And obviously this isn't going to make as much money as it would if it had a full run in cinema. We can't do that right now for obvious reasons. So I think it's great that we're getting some of that creative output out there. And what it might do is, in the long run, is bring down some of the cost of making movies, which I would love that. I like movies when it's less about the money and it's more about the story. For
sure. I think it's interesting that they do. I mean, it makes sense that Warner Brothers would do it that way because I feel like I guess they do have just as much of a vested interest in like their film revenue, but probably not as much as Disney. Like Disney makes so much money in movie theaters every time they release a movie.
So do these DC movies. Like they maybe not quite to the levels, and I mean it's the consistency of the Marvel movies that I think you're getting at. It's the fact that every movie now,
but
is
even like a Pixar movie. I guess I take your point. You're right. That everybody makes more money if it goes to theater, so it's an interesting choice not to paywall it. I actually understood the paywall thing. To be fair, I tried not to judge it. But I understood it. It's almost like...
I kind of got it, yeah.
It's like pricing...
But that was at the time when there weren't any cinemas as well, right? So they were literally trying to make any money back they couldn't. But I think the challenge with that is that people are... If you're already paying for Disney Plus, often, as you and me can completely attest to, is if you sign up for it, you often just stay signed up for like a year. So the lifetime value of someone signing up to that service is significantly higher than... I don't know many people are going to sign up for...
It's reoccurring revenue.
Yeah, exactly. And sure. I mean, I know it's easy to get like a free trial, but if you could remove that movie from free trials, people had to pay at least the first month to get it. I think that's... Are you looking at Luke Evans over there?
That's who he is. Yeah, okay. I was trying to give you a picture.
I know Luke Evans. He's in Dracula Untold, which was a hilarious...
Was that bad?
Oh, it was not good.
Let's see. Okay.
So just flipping on with the news, if I can speak super quickly there. We have had confirmation that Black Panther 2 will start production in July 2021. And this is obviously a very sensitive subject. And I know the guys at Marvel wanted to take their time about how they were going to go about things. There was some speculation that Chadwick Boseman would be CGI'd into this movie. That is a horrible thought. I don't think that should have ever happened. But Disney did come out and say that wasn't going to happen. So the thought is that Shuri will take a bigger role, the sister, which I love the idea of. I think she was a very compelling character. She's not portrayed in the movies as much of a warrior. So how that's going to work, I don't know. Whether they pivot towards more of like a double act movie or they bring in her and one of the other characters, or I tell you what I'd love, and I know it's not going to happen, but I would bloody love it if they could get Killmonger back.
I was going to say, it'd be a great, if they could find a way to make that happen,
so
it'd be awesome. But I mean, in that they've actually set themselves up pretty well for this because they established that the Black Panther isn't a singular person, right? So it's like,
but they don't have any more of those flower things that you get the Black Panther powers from. They got burnt in the movie.
Was that a thing that happened in the first one? It's been a while.
I believe so. I haven't watched the movie in forever.
Okay, fair enough. Well, maybe they'll find one more.
I'd like to think they could pivot with other characters. So let's just flick onto a couple of other cool bits of news. You know, The Last of Us, the video game.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, that's been picked up by HBO. And they're apparently going to make a series out of it. And I trust HBO, so...
I trust HBO, and apparently I haven't played those games, but apparently they're some of the best, like,
played the first
stories,
one. Phenomenal.
Ever. So, like, in gaming, so, like, it's got a story, it's a post-apocalyptic setting, it's got, like, all the recipes for an amazing blockbuster success. So,
well, talking of video games, one of the reasons I haven't had any time this week outside of unpacking, I completely forgot, is I've been playing Spider-Man Miles Morales, which is great. I'm very good at... With video games, finding side quests and just sort of doing all of them before I move on. We talked about this before. This is why I never got full into The Witcher, because I will do all the, even if it's like catch a pigeon or like find a backpack. I will get all those things first before I move on with the story. Because I don't know. With these games, with the Spider-Man games especially, because it is sort of sandboxed in a way. Like you just have the New York City, and I'm quite excited to explore more of it, especially in the new context. Like, I want to do that stuff.
Yeah, fair enough. No, I get it. And it's kind of, it's honestly overwhelming to do that in those other bigger games.
Oh yeah,
I think also though, like one thing The Witcher does really well is make it like feel like you don't actually know which quests are going to drive the main story in certain ways and which ones aren't. At least in The Witcher 2, which I played, they intertwine them pretty well.
I think they do too. Yeah. Well, with it, they're pretty standalone like side quests in the Spider-Man games. Okay, quickly moving on then because we will speed through some of these news sources. Deadpool 3 is officially in the works. It has the Molyneux sisters, Lizzie and Wendy, who you may know from their work on Bob's Burgers. Yeah, a comedy duo writing this, which is great. It's going to maintain Ryan Reynolds. I just love these movies, so I'm hopeful they continue strong. Next one is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 will start filming in late 2021. That's good news for everyone.
That's awesome.
I can't wait for that. That's going to be a fantastic movie. There are just a couple of other bits of news which have come out in the very recent couple of days. So Hawkeye, the new Disney Plus TV show, which will obviously include Jeremy Renner, and there's lots of speculation about what else that might include. But I believe that was today Jeremy Renner released a picture of himself on set looking all banged up. You can just about see it there. It's easy to search online.
He's always banged up, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, I'm intrigued because they also released a video of him having like his head, not wax, what's the word?
I saw that.
Like
I saw that video.
What do you call it?
It was like molded.
Like a mold of his head, that's the word. And there's speculation that might mean he's going to have his classic, really tacky comic book mask, which is this big purple thing. And if you don't know it out there, I'd look it up because it's pretty funny. But he's not yet had it in any of the movies. Other things to quickly mention are, did you hear about Mandalorian Gate this week?
I did not.
So I don't give a shit, and I don't know why people are so fussed. But do you remember in Game of Thrones, in the final season, when there was like a water bottle in the show?
I do.
Yeah, well, the same things happened with The Mandalorian.
It was like it was a Starbucks cup.
Yeah. And then there was a water bottle later on, and some poor dude's arm is just in one of the shots. Like, who cares, man? Like, stop being such a panicker.
Let me look at this one sec.
Yeah, well, if you can find it online pretty easily, it's bloody everywhere.
Could have just been a stormtrooper.
Nah, you can see his actual arm, like
a
stormtrooper getting undressed.
I mean, it's not as bad as like a Starbucks cup.
Yeah, fair.
That takes you out of the Game of Thrones universe.
No, that's very true. And the final bit of news I'm going to throw at you this week is
this Hawkeye mask is terrible. By the way,
it's dire.
Yeah,
it's awful.
It's like tacky.
It's just purple and weird.
Yeah.
So the final bit I'm going to throw at you this week is the confirmation that, and I'm actually really pumped for this, is that IO Interactive, the makers of Hitman, the video game, I don't know if you know it.
I did play I think the second one.
And a couple of terrible movies thrown in there as well. They have confirmed that they're working on Project 007, which is a 007 James Bond related video game. Now, if it's anything using any of the engines or any of the sort of variations on what the Hitman franchise became, then that's awesome.
It's the same developer as Hitman?
Yes.
I wonder if they'll do like a third-person Bond game.
I hope so.
Third person?
That'd be great. Yeah. That'd be great. I'd be way down for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, pumped. I think that'll be a fun game. I think I played Hitman in the very beginning. I think I played 1 and 2 with my brother, and we like loved those games growing up.
Yeah,
they were
really
just so
fun.
cool.
They've
evolved since then, so now they're more like you could do a lot of different ways of finding and killing people previously, but in the new ones, apparently, it's just more varied, and you can basically do whatever the hell you want.
It's there hasn't been a good Bond game in forever.
No.
So
I mean, they just become like standard like first person shooters, right?
Yeah, well, and they're not good ones. So, so it's like
shit.
I don't care if it's first person. If it was a good game, it'd be a good game. I don't think they would.
Yeah, and this has got a lot of potential. All right, awesome. Well, then let's quickly maneuver on to our main feature. And I don't know if you've brought a main topic theme with you. Did you?
I didn't bring it, but
do you want to do one?
Main topic themes. Oh, here we go.
Gotta hope someone eventually picks this show up and starts doing that. Okay, cool. Well, we obviously did the 5 worst movies, the 5 worst comic book movies rated by Metacritic to begin with, and now we've moved, as Drey alluded to before, we've actually moved on to something we enjoy. Do you want to preface it?
Yes, it is. Preface it like by say it what it is, or preface it as in give it like a bit of an intro.
Well, I
guess it's one of many Spider-Man movies.
Yep.
And it's quite standalone. I would say it took everyone very much by surprise in how critically acclaimed it was. And just stylistically how different it was to everything that was happening. Because I think they had the reboot right around when this came out as well, right after. We watched Into the Spider-Verse. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah, and I've been clamoring for this for a long time. I kind of alluded to it a couple of times talking about Spider-Man Miles Morales, and that's why I kind of played it down when we were mentioning it a minute ago, but that was kind of the drawing force behind this. That video game has come out. It's a hit. There's a lot of great reviews for it. It's going down really well, so we thought, why not dip into the Spider-Verse well?
Timely.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was obviously released 2018, 143 minutes long. The estimated budget was $90 million, and it made worldwide $375 million. And compared to what we've been saying recently, that's really good.
It's a success.
Now, sure. I'm actually a bit nervous about this one because it's a lot easier to talk smack about crap movies.
It is.
Than it is to talk about good movies. I think what we're probably going to do is go through a lot of the stuff that we would normally go through, but just deep dive a couple of little areas that we maybe sort of didn't talk about as much before. The actors, I think I've got a lot of cool notes on, and I think you might enjoy some of the bits, and I think you might have brought some too. So the directors, now I'm going to destroy this last name. I feel like I probably shouldn't even attempt it. Bob Persichetti. He only had one other directing credit, but he did work on Hercules, Mulan from the 90s, and Shrek 2. So he's more on the animated side.
Those were all great animated movies, to be fair.
Great animated movies. And also Peter Ramsey, who's the other director, 4 directorial credits, including Rise of the Guardians, which is less well loved. But when you pair those guys with the writing team of Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who teamed up on the Lego Movie and 21 Jump Street, you start to understand how this movie came together and the sensibility.
A lot of comedy too. Good comedy. I would say Bob Persichetti. Yeah, I think you did fine.
I don't know how I said it now.
That's fine.
I'm lost.
I think you did good.
I'm lost. Well, you mentioned the art style before. Do you want to talk about the art style a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really hard to even just talk about because it's so vivid and different. But I would say basically, if you want to put it in art direction, art style, and sound engineering, both of those things, were ace. In this movie. Good. It's awesome, and I think the way that they kind of meld an animated film with a comic book style frame rate.
Absolutely.
And the way the animations do look like you're almost flipping through a comic book. They're not fully fluid. They're chopped. I think there was I read some stuff about how they actually did it, where they, at certain times they would have I'm not a developer.
They had a significantly slower frame rate for a lot of the shots.
It'd be a 1 frame and a 2 frame, and sometimes different characters would be moving at different frame rates to illustrate their different skill levels or make them look more elegant.
Love it, yeah. And sort of one of the reasons they sort of went for this style was to sort of pay homage to a lot of the sort of print sort of art styles of previous Spider-Man. And you notice that the Spider-Man within this that we're going to start talking about in a moment, they all stick to those styles now, have very distinct ways of being on screen. And I love that. And I think they're actually trying to paint it. So in terms of its critical and commercial output, so let's say IMDb, did you note this down?
The rating?
Yeah.
I did see it, yeah.
Well, 8.4.
It was 8.4, 8.7. I honestly thought it would be higher. It was fucking,
I actually did.
I thought it'd be
Rotten Tomatoes sitting at 97 is pretty damn good.
I think IMDb is a bit harsher. They're a bit harder.
Well, you said this last time. You feel like good movies to be... Yeah, and I kind of agree.
Really good movies tend to be below 9. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Well, Metacritic gave 87, so that's usually a pretty harsh... critic. That's usually a pretty harsh critic, so I feel like 87's a really positive score. And coming from not everyone's gonna love comic book movies, so that's pretty awesome.
Agreed. And I think that they did another thing they did well was not even just make the normal parts look like comic, have a comic book feel. Obviously they added in the little dialogue boxes at appropriate times.
We'll get to that in a minute as well.
Just all that art direction, the style of making something modern feel like I'm sure comic book fans love this movie.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons, but that being one of the primary ones.
Absolutely. Completely agree. It's awesome. So let's just quickly dive into the actors. I've got a lot of interesting points to sort of talk through here. So we've got Shameik Moore, who plays Miles Morales. So I don't know a lot about him personally. He's not really in my Roadhouse, but I know he was in An American Saga, which is a TV series. Wu-Tang Clan, An American Saga, which is a TV show. But in terms of the character of Miles Morales, who he sort of portrays, obviously he's incredibly popular from the Ultimates universe. And it's very, very telling of how much impact he's had that he's come through into the main continuity of actual comic books And that doesn't happen that often. So it's really awesome to see sort of that takeover. But in terms of the rest of the cast, we had Jake Johnson as Peter B. Parker, who I absolutely love from New Girl, Jurassic World. Did you think he kind of really fit that part?
Well, I loved the voice for him. Without getting too much into the spoiler territory, I liked him a lot. And I'm trying to remember what else I've seen him in, because it's not New Girl. Like, I've seen him.
Jurassic World.
Tag?
Yes.
Yeah, that's where I got him. That's
Great.
right. Yeah, very funny.
Never seen that movie.
Honestly, underrated. Pretty funny.
Well, Haley Steinfeld played Gwen Stacy. She's also in Bumblebee. And the one that I'm super interested in is the Uncle Aaron character, which is actually Mahershala Ali.
Yeah, this guy.
Like, that's some incredible casting. Like, he's right on the cusp of becoming huge. He obviously had just done True Detective. He was huge from that. He is going on to play Blade in the MCU whenever that film eventually comes out.
I first saw him as...
So interesting.
He was in... Yeah, what was he in? What's the one with the president Netflix? First big Netflix original.
Is there a spider on top of your mic?
No, just some flies. God, you gave me a fright there.
Christ, I thought it was a spider. Hell.
That would have been... I'm very close to the mic, so that would have been quite a scare for me. What is it? The one with... It's the first big Netflix original that was about the president, and it had, what's his name?
Jared Butler?
No. It's a show. And
you mean House of Cards?
House of Cards. What is the guy's name? I can't... He's Kevin Spacey. He's in that as a lobbyist, and it's a great role.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the first time I saw this guy. And you're right. I think he was pretty big before this came out, but it's a good casting anyway.
Yeah. No, he will. I think, this was 2018. We're going to touch on that in a moment. But I think the really interesting thing about this Uncle Aaron character is... So Uncle Aaron as a character in, essentially, on film, obviously been voiced by Mahershala Ali. He was played by Childish Gambino in the Spider-Man Homecoming movie. But also...
Was he actually?
Yeah, but also as like a weird like flip on this... In the scene where Uncle Aaron is in his apartment with Miles, they show a split second where it shows Donald Glover on the TV screen when they're together in the apartment, and it's Miles and Uncle Aaron, and it is Donald Glover's character Troy from Community when he's got the Spider-Man outfit on. So this character is so multi-layered. It's so interesting, but yeah, it's a really cool part and a really really awesome actor. I really love that. Now, there's a couple of other interesting like actors. Obviously, I don't want to skip them all, but some things to call out. Mary Jane Watson's part is played by Zoe Kravitz, who interestingly is playing Catwoman in the new Batman movie, the Batman movie. Mm-hmm. That's going to be very cool.
Looks like a good casting.
Yeah. Obviously, Nicolas Cage was Spider-Man Noir. I just love the craziness of that.
I didn't actually realize that, and that's awesome.
That's so cool.
That's awesome, dude. My favorite one was, and I knew it right away because I've seen his comedy specials. Was Spider Ham from Sean Mulaney.
So like
his voice was so perfect,
so good. And he plays. Did you ever watch Big Mouth on Netflix?
Yeah.
I love that show, and he plays like the main character. I've forgotten.
Not Big Mouth, but the kid.
Yeah, he plays the kid. Yeah.
Fair enough.
But once I heard that, I couldn't separate the two characters, which really kind of annoyed me. But the last one I wanted to mention was Kimiko Glenn, who plays Penny Parker, the anime, the anime spider person.
Yeah.
Which I think you're gonna love. I think you're gonna love. Was that character was created by Jared Wade. Now you will know Jared Wade because he's the singer from My Chemical Romance.
What do you mean he was created by him?
He created the character for the Spider-Verse universe. And my other second favorite fact about him as a writer, Jared Wade, is he also created the Umbrella Academy.
Yep.
Which is one of the shows you and me have often talked about.
I knew about that, and it made sense. Like the whole style of that was like very My Chemical Romance. Like it had elements of their like Black Parade. And, you know, that kind of that album, which is a good album, man.
Yeah.
I actually quite
used to like that back in the day.
Yeah.
Well,
dude, I think the voice acting is great. Are we talking like actual character? No, we'll save it. We'll save it for after spoilers. But there's some things I want to talk about with Uncle Aaron for sure that I want to get into.
Well, do you want to wait until spoilers to get into that stuff?
Like I guess we don't have to. Like it's more. Yeah, it's probably better for them.
Okay, well then let's talk about the tone of the movie first. What did you feel was the tone of this movie like it's a hard one to pin down, even though it kind of fits a lot of the superhero tropes.
But it also like calls them out super well as well.
It was very fourth wall breaking.
Yeah, it's like it's a really great way to like kind of acknowledge the like at certain times embarrassing past of Spider-Man, but also move it forward and totally like look the tropes in the face and make fun of them in a really, really fun way, and also take it in a whole new direction. Like it did all that stuff really, and like it made it modern while doing all that other stuff.
It's interesting you say that because character of Miles Morales was created by Brian Michael Bendis, very famous comic book writer. It was created as if Spider-Man was created today.
No, it's very modern take. Look, from a tone perspective, it doesn't go all over the place in a bad way. Like it wasn't like they didn't mean to. They meant to have different universes collide. So the tone does kind of change based off who's in the scene. But I thought overall the tone was more happy-go-lucky, serious at time. It did all the things that a comic book superhero movie does.
But it did them incredibly well, which is. But I think the interesting thing to say about the genre, as it would be on IMDb, is animation, action, adventure, family, sci-fi, and that kind of gives you like a feel of like the tone of this. Like it's just smashing all these elements together. But I think the sort of direction and writing team that we mentioned up top just got it so right.
But that's the point of a good movie. Like a good science fiction movie actually isn't all about the science fiction. It's about the characters. It's about the family. It's about values. It's like a real world
all good
story
movies are about the
set
story.
in with some science fiction elements,
100%.
right? That's what this is. It tackles like family drama. It tackles like being a teenager. It tackles like
that's sort of leaning into themes.
Yeah.
What do you find the themes where this movie?
I think the theme is really just like, to say it best as the Spider-Man in the last bit without spoiling it says, take a leap of faith. Like that's kind of the theme of the movie. It's like you see it from a bunch of different angles.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's like you're not always gonna know how things turn out. You kind of have to just go for it sometimes.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
miss every shot you don't take.
Absolutely. That was obviously a key one. And I think the sort of ones, the side themes, shall we say, like the fish out of water, all these characters who weren't supposed to be in this universe. The most interesting thing I found was that they weren't the fish out of water. They were still in their element, all of the extra spider people.
Out of the universe.
Yes, but it was Miles who was out of his depth. Yeah. So that's what I found interesting.
It was a flip. It was a role, 100%. Is it a role reversal or how do you call it? But it was ironic.
Yeah, sure. It's just a big allegory for puberty, right? Which is hilarious.
Coming of age tale.
They literally make fun of that in the movie, which I loved.
That was the most awkward scene.
So good.
Ever.
Love that movie. Go on and hit me with the plot then. Talk to me plot. It's plot time.
Okay, the plot. So, and this is spoiler free.
Spoiler free plot.
Okay. So, it's kind of hard to say the plot without spoiling something right in the beginning. You can. All right. So anyway, there's Miles Morales who lives in New York City. I think he's Brooklyn based. He's kind of feeling a bit weird about himself because he's gone to this new school that's a bit more prim and proper, not as like urban and I guess like a public school you'd probably say that he used to go to. So he's going through a weird time.
Classic life struggle.
Classic, this is the worst thing in the world for me as a kid. Right, I've changed schools when in reality, it's not that big a deal.
Doesn't really change it.
His dad's a cop in New York, and
mom's a nurse.
Mom's a nurse. Just a wholesome family. Tenuous relationship with his uncle. His dad has. He's got a great relationship with them.
We can talk about that later.
All that kind of stuff. Gets bit by a spider as you do.
Yeah. Classic Spider-Man.
As happens in Spider-Man. Witnesses kind of the not true Spider-Man, but the original Spider-Man. Fighting a villain who ends up the Kingpin opening up the multiverse, which as a way to kind of, do we want to get into what the motivation behind that?
We can touch on that when we get to spoilers.
Anyway, opens up the multiverse, all the Spider-Mans collide, all the different versions of Spider-Man collide from the multiverse. They basically try and close the multiverse because they're all going to die if they don't. And that's kind of
but the only thing I had on top of that was Miles has to he has to battle his own insecurities. And also take on the battle of the villains, which is kind of, I think you succinctly sort of like covered everything off there. It's interesting because with a lot of the other Spider-Man movies we've had, not only is there a very small amount of diversity within them in terms of the casting, etc., but like they do I can see a few parallels with this in terms of there's a lot of villains in those movies. Like there's a lot of like preamble about the superhero. There's a lot of build up, but this does it so well. Like it takes away almost all of the stereotypes that surround like an initial superhero movie now.
Yeah, it is. And it's like you don't like the way they do it. Like at one point, something happens, and the guy goes, one of the different Spider-Mans goes, "Oh, that's a deep origin story." Like like you don't even realize it's the origin story. And that's like almost 3/4 of the way through the movie, right? For Miles. So you're right. They do it really well.
But I mean, like, I think we've sort of really touched on a lot of actors. There's some really good voice actors in there as well, outside of the sort of key ones, like Liev Schreiber. I'm never going to say his name right. Liev Schreiber, who plays Fisk or Kingpin, whichever you want to say. He was Sabretooth in one of the terrible Wolverine movies.
Yeah, I do know. I remember that. Yeah.
He's been in loads of stuff.
Yeah.
But just going back to that, the way he plays the character. That might come up a little later on, but like I think they really cast this incredibly well. Like they've not gone, they've not done a big fan casting. They could have. I mean, apparently they wanted to get Tobey Maguire in for one of the Spider-Man roles. Yeah. But from my perspective, I don't think it needed it. I thought they were all pretty spot on. Now, what I'd like you to tell me is this better or worse than a movie that was released 3 days after this film?
Aquaman was
which is Aquaman 2018.
It's way better.
You would watch this over Aquaman?
For sure. As would you.
Just checking. Just 100% checking.
Yes, with you. That's a no-brainer.
No, I
it's a little bit more fun to do that when it's like a iffy movie, I think. But you're fair call.
I don't know. I think at some point down the line, one of us is going to make it like... One of us is going to just be like, nah, I prefer Aquaman.
Not for this one.
Can you please stop hitting the microphone?
Yours is like a lot more conveniently placed. Right? But I'm in this weird angle. Anyway.
Just relax. All right.
Yeah, that's the plot. And without going into spoilers, I think it was a good one.
Let's jump into spoilers then. Talk to me. What do you think?
Okay, it was a really good movie. I'll go to my general thoughts. I think like I really loved the dynamic. So between like Miles, this young doe-eyed Spider-Man, and then the jaded 40-year-old.
100%.
I don't know. What is he? 40 or like 35? I think he hasn't had kids. He's like 35.
Pushing 40.
Yeah. He's like mid-30s.
Because he says he'd been doing it for 20 years in the film, and he started when he was 16, so let's say 36.
Yeah, he's like mid-30s because the Spider-Man that perishes.
Yep.
Because one.
Well, we can talk about that now.
Yeah, so Spider-Man does die.
There are two Peter Parkers in this movie. There's obviously Peter Parker, which is played by Chris Pine, not Chris Evans. I know you like to get those guys mixed up.
Love them both.
And then there was a Peter B. Parker, which, as we talked about before, is Jake Johnson, which I think is just a fantastic casting, because I know when I first saw the trailer for this, I was looking at this sort of Spider-Man being like, this isn't my Spider-Man. Like, he's like unshaven, like he's a bit overweight, and it's like...
the whole point. Yeah.
But that's the whole point of it, and it's that bait and switch that really gets you. And when you find out that, the real inverted commas Spider-Man dies in like the first like 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, for sure.
It's such a bait and switch, and I loved that about the film. It didn't mind, changing your expectations.
Yeah, you get like the fresh Miles Morales who's like making like dad jokes about his dad, who's like rambling about, oh, must be a disco, when he's looking at like this new cool coffee cafe. He's like, wow, you're old, dude. Like, you get these great jokes where it's like a young kid making fun of his dad. Then you get like all the jokes about the old Peter Parker. Yeah. Basically just like his whole role is basically calling out all the superhero tropes.
Well, I love the
happen.
Role,
it's hilarious.
Yeah, but that's really interesting. And I actually was reading a thing about it, and like his role is kind of tragic, because if you think about it, like he's more of a redemptive arc in the film. He goes from being this jaded sort of, I'm sick of this life. And think about it, like if you were doing superheroing from the age of 16, it cost you everything. Like in the movie, obviously he loses MJ. Of course you'd be jaded. You'd be. I'd be fucking sick of it.
Yeah.
I'm sick of it with him.
Yeah, it makes sense. He's just eating pizza. Yeah. He's getting a beer belly. What did he say? It's like, oh yeah.
He's doing crunches to impress him.
He's doing crunches, getting strong. He's chomping like a New York slice.
It's such a great movie.
I think that you touched on it just now, but like, I think it's really crazy. I think they did it for how many characters they packed into this movie.
Oh, so many. Well, we can dive into that a little bit in a moment.
I guess I'm just saying, like, they overall did have an arc for a lot of them. Like, you had 3 Spider-Man arcs that kind of got completed. No, I'm saying, like, that had like a character arc. I would say that like
as in through the movie.
Yeah, like I would say Miles had one. Yep. Peter Parker B had one, and I would even say Spider-Woman.
She was
Spider-Gwen Stacy?
Well, she's Spider-Woman, but in her comic's called Spider-Gwen. But
Spider-Gwen.
It wouldn't make sense for her to be called Spider-Gwen because people would eventually find out who she was. Like, it wouldn't be difficult. So Spider-Woman, yeah.
So, yeah, I thought all three of them kind of had an arc, right? Yeah. So it was pretty impressive to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
With all the villains. And
well, that's the thing as well. And the one thing that I usually sort of hold up in these type of movies is how compelling is the villain's story. Now, obviously, the key villain in this really is Kingpin. And, like, I struggled a bit with his character. I'm actually going to mention that in my best and worst in just a minute. But I didn't find him as compelling. But it didn't really matter because we had all these awesome heroes who had all their own flaws. Peter B. Parker was almost his own villain at times. Like,
sure. As was like, well, not really Miles, but I mean, Miles had to confront his fears. That was like one of the biggest things for him. He was getting in his own way. But
there was one thing that I found super interesting about this movie was that you didn't really see. I know Miles Morales obviously had their sort of the store-bought Spider-Man costume, but he didn't suit up until the last 15 minutes of the movie.
Last scene, pretty much.
But I love that. So I wrote down this little thing, and I was thinking about it, and you know, in the regular Spider-Man movies, you need the Spider-Man to suit up at the latest sort of halfway through, maybe 2/3. Yeah. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense, and you're missing out on time of having, you know, like a bankable asset on screen. Whereas in this, they had 5 other Spider-Men on the screen all the time. Mm-hmm. So it was like he didn't need to be Spider-Man.
It fit his part. He had to be that scrub for a bit,
and he had to go through that process to become who he was. And that sort of story arc was so good. And the way, and I know it's real kind of classic tropes, but the way he used like Peter B. Parker's own move on him at the end, and like,
it was good.
But it was done really well. I thought it was done like very tastefully.
Watch the hands, not the mouth.
Watch the hands. Every date you've been on.
I on your villain comments, I would say I actually liked Kingpin.
Oh, cool.
But I take your point. Like, I feel like the one gripe I'll have is on the villain front.
Yeah.
And I almost didn't care because I was being bombarded with so many cool villains from the old TV show that I used to watch. Because I was like, there's all like, and it kept me. But I can feel like if I wasn't a fan of that, that might have annoyed me. Like, there was no true motivation for the villains except for Kingpin, his family thing.
I mean, the rest of them were sort of lackeys, right?
They were kind of just there.
Yeah, right? but that's the role of the lackey, right? I think the interesting thing. Okay, I'm going to shift this out of my best and worst because it's not really bad. But I think the thing with that Kingpin is, like you say, his motivations are kind of questionable. Not really. I get it. Lost his family.
That makes sense. That was the only motivation that I think made sense.
I understand it. I found it a bit weak. They didn't really give us a lot of growth on that front. But the other thing, and I mentioned it before, obviously coming off the back of watching the Daredevil TV show, which finished sort of a few months earlier, and having that awesome, strong portrayal of Kingpin in that and how brooding and dark he was and dangerous. Like, and I get it. It's a different tone. It's a different type of movie. It's a different type of media. But I don't think it held up quite as well. And I found it really weird that his head was like in the middle of his body.
It's kind of funny. I thought his character design was really cute. Like, not cute, but like funny and like obviously weird.
Fair enough.
I liked it.
You like that?
But, and I also liked, it's not cute. That was a horrible word to use. But it's just like, what is going on? You know, it's obviously meant to draw your eye to this weird looking dude.
Yeah. But just saying, talking about the villains.
Yeah.
Yeah, talking about the villains, there were a perfect amount of 6. So you obviously had Kingpin, Doc Ock, Tombstone, Scorpion, the Prowler, and the Green Goblin, which, you know, Sinister Six. That's the sort of like gold standard for like a Spider-Man. That's what every movie, all of the movies have tried to get the Sinister Six or start like a franchise where they can build to a Sinister Six. And this did it without even thinking about it or even mentioning it. It just did it on the down low.
They just did it.
I loved it.
They just threw him in.
Yeah,
they didn't even care to. So like I actually did like Kingpin's story because it was like the thing that capped it for me was in the multiverse, like when he's in that vortex and he actually finally does get to see his family. Yeah. Like, he hasn't changed. He's doing the same things
still doing it,
that made them run away and get killed in that car crash in the first place.
Whereas,
and it's like,
whereas the Peter B. Parker character, he has changed. He's grown up.
It's this juxtaposition, and then you also see like, okay, like if you don't change, you're doomed to repeat your same mistakes. And so I thought that was kind of cool.
Well, one thing I literally just realized as we were talking then is there aren't any like henchmen in this movie.
No, it's all ace.
Which is great. Which gives you more time with the actual villains.
There's a few henchmen that's just shooting lasers at times. But,
yeah, I mean,
and they're all strapped to the
zero.
They're all strapped, bro. They have these laser guns. Anyway, who is the guy with the two guns? Is that Tombstone you mentioned? What's his story? What's his deal?
Yeah, Tombstone.
I remember him, but he looks like Captain Planet.
Was that Tombstone in this?
There was.
I think he was Tombstone, right? Yeah, you're right. He is indestructible to the best of my knowledge.
Okay.
But the one thing I wanted to call out was some of the scenes, I love that they went over the top but didn't go too far with some of the scenes. And a perfect example of this, and I had to write down, was, the scene where he very first meets Peter B. Parker in the graveyard. Yeah. And then they get caught on the train and they're being dragged along. And there's all these subtle references and it's just so good. It just has everything. And but it doesn't take it that step too far that, maybe slightly worse writers would have done and made it cheesy, or it just has everything.
Spider-Man and a corpse of a homeless man. Yeah. No, they did a great job with that.
I thought that was phenomenal.
Dude, the whole movie was full of honestly, this is my second time watching it, and there was a lot of stuff that I caught. This is high rewatch value.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because there's jokes being fired at you all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's little things you don't notice, when they're fleeing the laboratory,
the bagel?
Yes. I did not see that the first time.
So I'm going to skip forward to my trivia for just one moment. Yeah. There is actually an awesome piece of trivia about that.
Bagel at his head.
The bagel text, right? So the one that here's the scientist.
What does it say?
Just says bagel.
Okay, I thought it said
just
bagel.
Bagel, right? But that was added. So basically, one of the animators pitched it as a joke, was just messing around, and they laughed so hard that they added it into the movie. I fucking love that. That's so good. Yeah. But we're just jumping around a little bit, and I think that's cool.
How about Peter Parker being we're not swinging to the Hudson Valley, New York. It's a 2-hour. That's deep suburbs, bro.
Love that. And but that gets skipped over so often.
Absolutely, bro. I would not be walking to Hudson Valley. It's being all right, let's walk to Newtown.
Well, it's that bit.
Even worse, actually.
It's that bit in Homecoming where he's in the burbs and he realizes he has to run because he can't flip through the city. It's so good. I think it also sort of managed to sort of build not only characters, but the relationships really organically as well. The way that him and, Miles and Spider-Gwen, it wasn't forced. They weren't forced on you as this couple type thing. It was just it was an organic friendship building. And in further films that potentially stuff could change, but it was just very chill. And I really like that about this movie.
I did too, and I think that her arc was learning to have a friend again, right? Although to be fair, she didn't actually. She was pretty friendly the whole time.
She wasn't that friendly when she was having the side of her head cut off.
Well,
sheared off, cut off. Wow,
fair, yeah, that was gruesome. No, fair enough.
Jeez.
When she was nice before, even while he just kept saying puberty, the only word that could come out of his mouth.
I think she was just trying to find out if he was the one she was looking for, right?
For sure. What else do I have? Just random, before we get into best and worst, random thoughts.
Well, there's one other thing that we haven't mentioned yet, which is the post-credit scene.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Did you understand that?
I searched it after and I didn't. It's an old.
Well, okay, so the Spider-Man we're seeing that is Miguel O'Hara, who's Spider-Man 2099. All right, it's just a different version of Spider-Man, obviously from the future.
Okay,
and he has obviously perfected the technology to jump through
the multiverse.
The multiverse in this scene. The interesting thing about him is he's actually, and again another aside to talk about this guy, Oscar Isaac.
I did see Oscar Isaac on the credits, and I was
I didn't realize at all.
I didn't realize it either.
But obviously, he goes back and he recreates the famous meme of pointing Spider-Man. Yeah. So and I love that. But there's also a subtle hint to a different Spider-Man meme. Did you pick it up?
No.
It's really fucking subtle.
I did not.
It's a deep cut. So you know the scene when they break into the laboratory to try and steal the data off the computer.
Yeah.
Spider-Man is obviously behind the desk, and that's a clear reference to the Spider-Man behind the desk meme. The one where he's got the implode. So it's I really like that. And that was deep cut.
Good news for you. We don't need the monitor.
I think great, I really think we should have prefaced this up top. We're not going to touch on every single fucking Easter egg and or reference because it's mind blowing how many there are.
There's probably so many in this movie.
And I love Spider-Man to death.
High rewatch value.
Yeah. No. I think if you are that interested in speaking about one of the different Easter eggs or whatever, please email us in at the end or just talk to Drey specifically. He would love to talk to you all about these Easter eggs.
I'd love to talk about Aunt May's whatever picture of Uncle Ben behind her in one scene is the actual whatever it may be. I don't actually know. What else, dude? There was her Doc Ock's desktop looks exactly like mine. So we got that in common with the villain. Yeah.
Did you like that they gender swapped Doc Ock? I loved that.
Yeah, I loved all of it because
really
it was like subverted all your expectations, man. I really did think that they did all the right things there. Absolutely, with like villains and just like even it was a good surprise.
I think this movie is just packed to brim with like like you say, awesome switcheroonies. Like it's obviously set in the Ultimates universe, so you don't have quite everything exactly as you might expect it by if you've just seen the other Spider-Man movies. It's great. It's real phenomenal, and I really did enjoy the tribute to Steve Ditko and Stan Lee. There was actually a couple to Stan Lee. Yeah. The Stan Lee cameo was great. Almost like it always so fits eventually. Yeah, I love that. About? No, I kind of like that. But there's obviously a really touching tribute at the end of the movie where they just put up his famous quote. Yeah, which was great, and I really like that. So.
How about we're like the New York that they built in this? Like it felt like
we haven't talked about that.
It felt like New York. This is the first Spider-Man movie that I've seen where it actually felt like New York, real deal. I got like an itch to go to the Big Apple and like.
So you mean like the Superman movie we watched last week that was filmed in Milton Keynes? You didn't feel like that felt like a big American city? Oh wow, that's so interesting.
Not even like a big American city. Just like that felt like a farm. No, you're right. It didn't. But
no, yeah, I agree with you. Like, I loved all.
Like, it was snowing at one point, and I was like, "Wait a sec!" Like, yeah, New York snows. Why didn't any other movie? Yeah,
because they're always in fucking
summer. It's always summer. Yeah.
But a lot of things I've got a fair few in facts and trivia, but there's like so many little references, like the Coca-Cola that changes every time. Yeah. Like and like there are just so many little ones like that, and just seeing that city makes me feel like I want to visit it. Like,
no, have you been?
I have been. Yeah, good. It's a long time ago though. It's when I was probably about 21. So
okay, fair enough.
That's a while ago for me.
We'll have to go back.
Yeah, I know. I'd love to go back at some point. All right, okay. Give me a best 3 and best worst things in the movie. Do you want to start with best or worst?
I really only have one worst thing.
Oh, okay.
Not even worse. It's something I would have liked to see more of. I like this movie a lot. It was hard for me to come up with anything too bad, but the thing I didn't like was I really wish you got more of Uncle Aaron. I was so intrigued by that story. Like we didn't actually. I was so ready for them to give me a bit more about why those two don't see eye to eye. Yep. What is the history that drives him to go become a villain? Like, you know what I mean? Is it like, hey, he was an artist and it was a failed artist, and to prove he wasn't quite unsuccessful, he needed a way to make money, and that just got snowballed, right? And it becomes
okay. Well, I don't know. I can give you a bit of background on that because obviously I did a bit of research for this before.
But point being, they didn't delve into it.
I completely agreed, but just for your own knowledge, the way it's worked in the comics is that they had a criminal past together, as in they were like petty criminals. And then when the father, have I forgotten the father's name?
I forgot.
Oh, God, it's killing me.
Anyway, Miles' dad, Mr. Morales.
Well, it's not actually. It's Davis, isn't it? 'Cause it's Officer Davis. How have we forgotten this already? I literally have it here.
I have everybody's name except for his.
Here we go. So when Jefferson Davis, his dad, meets his mum, he has a change of heart. Moves away from his criminal lifestyle, gets a job with the police. Okay. So that's where the line in the sand is, because Uncle Aaron refused to sort of change his ways. Yeah,
fair enough. We didn't get that really interesting.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Yeah. And I think that would have been nice to explore more. But how could you fit that into this movie?
I think you just I put the note that you make the decision to cut some of the villains and give us 2 fleshed out ones, or you just make the decision to lean into a lot of villains because it's fun, and they kind of did that. Yeah, I think all you need to do is give us one scene of it. You could have found the time to help us understand why is he a villain?
But I think it was the conflict. So from my perspective, the thing that made that really powerful was that conflict was so raw, and when he died, when the conflict between Uncle Aaron and Jefferson. When he was killed, that he was still, even though they had the conflict and they were butting heads, he was still so broken up about it. Yeah, and I think that gave that so much more gravitas.
I don't think it would have taken it away having more information about why he became what he was. I think if anything,
I think that takes away a little bit of the sort of the father's backstory. I feel the story you see on screen I think is bolstered by him being more of a virtuous guy. Like he's not perfect by any means. You can tell
I'm not
by the
saying
way.
you have to mess with. You don't have to make it exactly the way you said it. I'm just saying I want to know more about what. Like,
Sure.
I didn't even know he was a criminal.
Prequel.
Like he didn't even have any criminal tendencies.
Prequel.
All of a sudden, he was just a villain.
No, I think that's a good bait and switch though. Like that works. That really works. I mean, we haven't really dived into like how he dies and stuff.
I'm not. Yeah, I mean, well, Kingpin shoots him.
Yeah, which sucks.
As he's letting.
But that's obviously Miles's like Uncle Ben moment.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think one of the really interesting parts of that is that like when he's like, you don't understand, and they're all like, we're the people who understand the best.
Yeah,
you know,
dude,
like it's like
come on, bro.
Yeah, like come on. But they all have that tragic backstory, and that's a really interesting thing about the Spider-Man. I like the Uncle Benjamin. I found that really funny. Like Spider-Man Noir was just great. So go on.
Yeah.
I've cut you.
Yeah, you're right. He's like, mine was Uncle Benjamin.
Did you? So you just had one worst thing?
So that was my only worst thing.
Do you want me to do my worst?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, cool. Well, so one thing that, okay, and this is like me nitpicking massively.
Of course, it's a good movie.
Yeah, was the Spider-Ham gags. So some of them I was a bit like,
come on, dude, I loved it.
I mean, it's really one specifically, but the annoying thing is like I love it and it worked really well with the film, but it was the bringing the mallet into the quote unquote real world when he pulled it out and it come his pocket and then he's always got this huge mallet. I'm a bit like, it sort of for me breaks a little bit of the consistency of the movie.
It's a plot hole.
It's not really, but I get it.
Because all the matter would have kind of disintegrated from the other multiverses. Yeah.
Maybe. And I don't.
Yeah, I mean, that is a very big.
It's really.
But
Okay, so I have two other. I think another one that annoyed me a little bit was that they did hold off a little bit of the potential backstory and maybe potential of filling out Gwen Stacy's role, because I think there's going to be an Origins or a future movie which is more focused on her.
For sure.
So that annoyed me a little bit. I think they could have fleshed her out more. And the last one was just that it's Sony. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, those guys, if anyone could fuck up a Spider-Man movie or a future Spider-Man movie, it's going to be them. Right?
Yeah, look, it's crazy that they didn't. That's the impressive part.
Well, it kind of sounds like they didn't, like, they allowed these guys to have a lot of creative control.
Well, so. It got leaked in the big hack that they had.
Oh, well, that it was happening?
That it was happening.
There you go.
Yeah. But there was it was very nascent at that point. The idea was...
there you go. Well, give us
there's a sequel.
Yeah. Out. Well, that was going to be a point at the end. But yeah, I think it's 2022. It's been literally the last week or so confirmed for.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't put it in news.
Sure, cool.
Okay, give me best 3 things.
So one of them is super small. Miles' Nikes that he reps like pretty much the whole movie. I was like, I love how they just gave him some like Air Jordans.
Oh yeah,
or something.
There
like
is
that.
so much product placement in this movie.
Yeah, it was so obviously the Nike swoosh, and they gave it like a lot of just spot on images. But absolutely, it's like the modern Spider-Man. If you were like this kid, and you would be wearing like Nikes, you wouldn't be like wearing like little slippers.
Nah,
you know what I mean?
So who in Spider-Man wears slippers?
I'm just saying, like whatever's a part of the onesie, they're more like slippers than they are Nikes.
All right, tell me more.
And then I think just the general comedic elements, man. There's so many. Like,
give me an example.
I think it was basically a lot of them. I just realized they're all from
Spider-Ham.
No, it's Noir Spider-Man, where he's looking right at us while we talk about him, or like the Rago, the wind follows, and it tastes like rain. Like, there's a lot of them.
Barney's given a lot of creative freedom.
That's awesome.
Which is great.
That's awesome.
Like, if you're gonna have Nick Cage in a movie, give him some creative freedom.
Yeah, and then
the man's crazy.
Obviously, the just comedy between Spider-Man, Jaded Spider-Man, and Miles Morales is great. And then the last one was just I thought it was super cool. Very early in the movie when Spider-Man Peter Parker dies. Mm-hmm. Everyone has the Spider-Man masks at the funeral, and when Mary Jane's speaking, I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." Like, it was like I thought that was like a cool little vibe.
Okay, that's actually a really interesting one. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
I've kind of stayed away from like the real obvious ones with mine. A little bit like your last one, like, you know, like the animation style or the music.
Yeah, of course.
We barely even touched on the music. The music was great.
The music was amazing. How creepy was
it was very good.
You know what? I'm switching one of the. How creepy was Prowler's song?
Oh yeah.
Like every time he came on.
It was almost like a slasher movie from the 80s.
Yeah.
Did you notice that? It had that real jarring like.
It did.
That's not going to go in the final edit. Because that was real bad.
It needs the
It was bad. Yeah, it was not good. Okay, so my best 3 were the relationship of Miles and his dad. Like, I think that's so relatable, you know?
Yeah.
The sort of challenges in communication, the fact that every teenager has those moments, and this guy's now become a goddamn superhero. It's like, that makes it even harder. And that scene where his dad's behind the door and he's trying to have that moment, that moment with him.
Yeah.
And it's just so touching, and I love that. And I think that's part of the strength of this movie is the family aspect. Like, obviously, original Spider-Man, family, mom and dad are dead. It's like, well, unless you're the Amazing Spider-Man version. But real Spider-Man, obviously, mum and dad are dead from the get-go, and I think it's real nice and real wholesome that, you know, for once we get to see a Spider-Man who can actually enjoy himself a little bit, rather than just being a sad man all the time.
Fair enough.
I think, yeah. I think the improvement on the Uncle Ben death, it was way more nuanced. Like, you know, the classic Uncle Ben gets shot in the alleyway. I think this was just like set a new standard. Like,
for Miles,
when Uncle Aaron died, it was obviously his version of Uncle Ben. So I thought the subtleties in that were great. Like, you know, he pulled the mask off, then he was pulling the mask on back onto him, almost like he was steeling himself to, you know, hurt his nephew.
I couldn't tell what he was going to do there. They kept it like just ambiguous enough that you don't know, which was good.
That's what I mean. Like, I thought there was so much more. I use the word nuance because that's the best way to sort of approach it. I think it was just so subtle. It was great. And my final one was, and I have got a little bit obvious here, but like the handling of the introductions. Like,
great.
It could have been so easy to fuck that up.
Yeah, great.
Like, you have to introduce all these characters, and the repetition. It could have been so easy to if you lost, you lost a fraction of that humor. And the bit when the extra three at the end get introduced and they do the whole, how did you get here? Oh, wait, no, it's not that long a story. You lose one of those points of humor and the whole thing just goes out the window.
Yeah. You know what else I liked? Do you remember when they go into the lab and he's giving his like rundown of how he's going to get into the lab, and it's like, no, it's not that guy. It's actually, she's the lead scientist.
Yeah.
Goes, I got to reevaluate my internal. I was like, wow, they threw that in. It was like
that's what I love about this movie.
It was like a reevaluate your own like internal biases comment.
Incredible.
And it was just like within like 5 seconds it happened. I was like, did I just miss something?
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah. There's a lot of that in there. I almost think like Peter B. Parker's almost a new Deadpool.
He was very Deadpool-esque. And then the other one that I missed that I wanted to talk about was that scene. This is what made me kind of actually like this Kingpin. And I'm sure you like the, what's his name from Daredevil, that version.
Yeah.
You liked him a lot. So for me, I was like iffy on him. So I can see that we're on opposite ends there. But like the pen clicks as he's going through the memories, I was like, that was a really cool way of doing it. Like the memory of his family dying, but click. He's just obviously a guy that's like lost his marbles.
Yeah. But fragilely holding it together. Yeah, that's real. And that was a good way to build the tension around him as well. Yeah. That was almost like the Jaws music to me. Like, was he going to snap? Was he not? You know, like it had that sort of tension to it. But like we mentioned before, like I'm not going to touch on every sort of trivia and Easter egg. Do you have anything else to say before I jump into trivia?
No, I think I covered it all, but I had a lot down. So
there's a lot. Like there's a lot to talk about this. Well, let me give you a couple bits of fun trivia. There is a really fun reference to the Web of Life and Destiny in there. Now, I don't know if you ever watched the Spider-Man cartoon in the 90s. Really popular Spider-Man cartoon, was everywhere.
I mean, I did, but...
Well, there's episodes around Madam Web, who essentially is this old wizened lady who... she holds all the fates of the Spider-Man.
Is she like the cat seance lady from Catwoman?
No, she's actually fun. I love the reference.
The one that just knows everything about ancient cat lore.
Yeah, but she can see into all the different Spider-Verses. And there's a really fun reference to that very early on when Peter B. Parker has been dragged into the hole, whatever it is, and he sees like a web of like in front of him. That's really interesting. And also, when that's happening, the Kingpin's multiverse machine actually names all of their universes. So, like the universe Peter B. Parker comes from, and then Penny Parker, etc., etc. So it actually has the numbers from. Well, they're equated to ones from the comic book, but they're not exactly like they're not perfect.
Who's the real Peter Parker? Blonde Parker or brunette Parker?
Great question.
Who's the real one?
That was what I was thinking when I was watching.
I got a vibe. Peter B.
See, I think they tried. So they obviously, well, Peter Parker, the original Chris Pine's Peter Parker, is in the Ultimates universe with Miles Morales. So you would expect that is the ultimate Spider-Man who, he does die in that universe in the comics.
Oh, he does. Okay.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that Peter B. Parker is the Spider-Man we've all grown up with.
Mm.
So it's a really good question.
I don't know. Peter B is pretty jaded.
Think? Yeah.
Like, so maybe he was, I don't know. I want to say Peter B just because
I would like to think that too. But I think as well, like we started talking about before, like if he'd been doing it for 20 plus years.
Yeah. Like, well, that also makes it more real. Like maybe that is just where you.
That's what I liked about that character. He was very realistic. I just wrote down, how did this all work?
Yeah. No, they throw so much into this movie, and you're right. For the amount of stuff, characters, things they throw at you. Like, to be fair, I don't know that you could necessarily approach this movie, I don't know, what do you think? Without having any knowledge of Spider-Man and enjoy it as much. But it's still an entertaining movie. It'd just be hard.
I think entertaining. I mean, who doesn't vaguely know about Spider-Man?
I don't know. One down the hall would be pretty hard pressed to,
to
understand what's going on.
I feel like everyone has a vague knowledge of Spider-Man, Like most people have seen the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, surely, at least.
Dude, you know they had 177 animators on this movie?
Yeah, I was going to say that. That's just a joke. There's one really cool reference that I know I love. I'd love it if you like this as well. But so the scene when Peter B. Parker arrives in Times Square in Miles' universe.
Yeah.
It does a flash from a billboard, and the billboard has a movie on it called From Dusk Till Dawn, which was originally a sort of semi-planned Edgar Wright movie as a follow-on from Shaun of the Dead with the original characters,
so it's like
and also including vampires.
So this time it gets like this in this universe that movie gets made.
In this universe that movie gets made, which I want to be in that universe. I want to see that fucking movie.
How has he not made that movie? That's like such a no-brainer for him.
I don't think I wanted to return to the characters.
Fair enough. Well, isn't one of them a zombie at the end? Sorry, spoilers.
Shaun of the Dead from 2004. I think it's fine. Yes, Nick Frost's character is, And I had a couple of others, but the one I'm going to finish with is that when I was doing my research into just general Spider-Man, I definitely mentioned this to you. I don't know if I mentioned it on air, and we are 100% going to do a show on this, is that there is, whether it's a joke or not, I'm not entirely sure, but there is an Italian Spider-Man movie, and in this version, he is effectively a fat porn star with a spider jumper on, and he like smokes and has a motorbike.
I can't go back, Tommy. Don't make me go back.
That's gonna be fucking hilarious. So we need to watch that at some point. Well, I think for that movie, do you have any final thoughts?
Just that it's a really great movie. I highly recommend it. Would watch it again. Would find new things I like about it. Makes me want to play the game.
It's so good.
But I don't have the system. We'll see eventually. It's a good one.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for sticking with that, because I think it was definitely tougher doing something I enjoyed, which is weird. Even though I really wanted to talk
about it. Yeah. Well, it's harder. Here's what I'll say, and we probably didn't do this well. It's hard not to become full fanboy.
Yeah,
it's hard to have funny.
Hard to be critical.
It's hard to be critical, and also to just have good, funny chat about like something. You're just like,
we have funny chat.
Love that. It's very, very much harder.
Well, all right. Well, then we might as well quickly skip on to our next very famous section, which is emails.
Oh yeah. What's next?
Well, we did actually. A friend of the show, Steve, messaged a couple of really fun things, and I actually avoided bringing them up in news because I thought they might be interesting to talk about. There have been rumors that The Witcher 2 season 2 has restarted filming in Surrey in England, so that must mean they're back outside and back shooting in the wilderness, which is good news.
Is Surrey a beautiful place? Have you been?
It's a very pretty place.
Okay, for some England standards.
Some parts of it. Says this guy from the swamp.
Los Angeles isn't that great.
No, I think that's really cool, and I'm glad that's pushing ahead. I know we've made fun of it previously, but that's a good one.
No, I'm actually really excited for it again because I realized, as I said last week, I was just super confused the entire time I was watching the first season.
Yeah,
I was just confused, and I never.
But we could guess most of it.
Yeah, but I never took the time to actually go back and try and remember if I figured it out. I just kind of vaguely thought I did, and actually I didn't. I was confused.
Okay, well. He mentioned a couple of other bits of news, which I like these supplementing the news. That's good fun. He also mentioned that something we didn't bring up last week was that Our old favorite show, WandaVision. Your old favorite show.
I love it.
Well, apparently it's going to have a lot of callbacks to Infinity Saga. And apparently the show has been guided by Dick Van Dyke, because a lot of the ones that are set in the past have effectively taken on like a sitcom vibe from, like, for example, the 60s, and they were filmed in front of an audience, even dressed in all the garb from those years, which is really interesting. And I assume those people are under NDAs, which essentially tell them they will murder them if they mention anything about that show. There is also one other piece of movie, which is, and I was going to bring this up next week, but I think we'll quickly mention now, the Downton Abbey star reportedly being eyed to play Magneto in the MCU. Obviously, X-Men now being owned by Disney because of the Fox merger. It's really interesting that they're sort of eyeing new people. I really did enjoy, the Fassbender McAvoy.
Hugh Bonneville, that guy?
I've lost his name.
Oh.
Hang on. Dan Stevens. Who I have no idea who he is. Steve, friend of the show, right back in and tell us all about Dan Stevens.
Yeah,
I've never watched Downton Abbey. I have no idea what happens in that show. Why don't you...
He's not top billed cast, mate.
No, he's really not. And I have no idea. I honestly don't know that much about him.
Oh, here he is. Okay. Anyway. Good looking dude.
Great. Well, friend of the show, Steve, right back in. Let us know all about Dan Stevens, because we obviously have no idea. Do you think he'll be a good Magneto? Not asking you. You don't know. I don't know either. I'm asking Steve. Steve, let us know. And if anyone else has any, ideas, maybe who would be a good Charles Xavier, do let us know.
Yeah.
Drey is here with the Gmail address.
I am. thepodcastassemble@gmail.com.
Yes!
Wow.
We got there. I knew you'd get it eventually. And do you remember the Twitter address?
The Podcast Assemble.
Very close. You can just search Podcast Assemble on Twitter, or it's pod_assemble.
Wait. So you made the Twitter Podcast Assemble.
I couldn't get Podcast Assemble.
And you made the Gmail, the Podcast Assemble.
Yeah. I couldn't get Podcast Assemble for either.
Purposely trying to ruin me.
I couldn't get either. But the handle for Twitter is @pod_assemble. So
fair enough.
If anyone wants to find us on those, you're more than welcome. That would be great to have some more correspondence. Thank you very much, Steve. We did have an email from a friend of the show, Matt, as well, coming back on what we asked him last week. We have done well over an hour though, so maybe we'll come back to that next week.
Okay, we'll save it. Yeah,
we'll save that in the bank for next time.